Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, July 19th, 2024. First up this week, there were a couple of pieces. I wouldn't even call them news. They're more like regulation commentary. And one was from England in the UK, and the other one was from here in the US. And it's just a conversation worth having. It's a couple of things worth thinking about. The link to both stories is in the show notes, but the juxtaposition is really interesting. So in the United States, there was recently a kind of news summary / op-ed on the website Governing, talking about all the different regulations that have been put in place since the Penrose thing and other instances of funeral home bad behavior, funeral director bad behavior when it comes to final disposition. And the scope of the article is that this regulation should help, that the regulation is something that's going to make the bad actors go away. And I'm very skeptical about that. I'm not saying that it won't make them go away. I'm just saying that I feel like the regulations are doing the wrong thing. Over the next couple months in Funeral Service Insider, one of the stories that we're going to be kind of covering, and one of the things we're going to be a little picking at, I guess, is what I want to say, is this idea of dual licenses and what it would mean. There are so many stories that tiptoe around the issue of whether and how important it is to have an embalming license in order to be a funeral director. I mentioned in last week's, I think, In Case You Missed It, and it's something that I believe, and this is me completely editorializing, but I think that you should definitely have to know how to handle a body respectfully. And I think that's something that you should be taught in school. Whether it's critical that you know the science for putting the correct chemicals in an age where there aren't even always enough bodies to embalm for practice, as we'll bring out in an upcoming story in FSI. It's something where clearly something has to give, and it's too complicated to go over now, but it's also something that's coming up in consumer media, this idea that regulation might help, and I think maybe a reevaluation more than regulation will be a better answer. On the flip side, the story from the UK is that they've finally got the influx of funeral directors they've all been looking for, but the cost is that there aren't any real regulations for becoming a funeral director in the UK. You can voluntarily do lots of stuff. You can join the National Association of Funeral Directors. See what they did there? But there are no statutory rules or regulations on funeral directors in the UK. There's also the independent funeral directors, but these are self-governing groups, and the UK press is starting to tease out the complications in not having any government oversight whatsoever. Interestingly, with no oversight and with plenty of oversight, there are still the same problems on both sides of the Atlantic, and I think it probably more has to do with the amount of easy money that's involved if you are going to be fast and loose with people's loved ones. And I don't know if there's a rule that can stop that. But again, links to these stories in the show notes. You should check them out. I think there's plenty to think about in there. Third-generation funeral director Keith Anderson was elected to be the District 5 director for the Michigan Funeral Directors Association. I mention this because it's part of my In Case You Missed It, and I have it out on the web on the In Case You Missed It section of Funeral Service Insider. But also last week I put out a call, and I want to put it out again to anyone who's listening. If you have a promotion, if you have anything professional happening to you, send it along to me with a headshot, because I'd be happy to run it and share it and make sure it gets attention from your peers as well as from your neighbors. A lot of the stuff goes to the local paper, but it never goes to, a national publication that can share it with interested people. There are also two NGL promotions that I'll share with you next. National Guardian Life Insurance Company has announced two promotions, one of Cameron Black to Senior Vice President of Pre-Need Sales and Business Development, and Andrea Raulu to Senior Vice President and Chief Actuary. Black joined the company in 2019 and will be responsible for focusing on providing the expertise, leadership, and resources needed to best serve families. Raulu joined in 2011 and has been there for 20 years and will oversee valuation, product pricing, assumption setting, and experience duties. She and her team will manage NGL's value of new business calculation and embedded value determination. In addition to the In Case You Missed It section of FSI, we also have an M&A section where we cover mergers and acquisitions between and among funeral homes. If you are part of a merger and acquisition and you want us to report on it, or you want us to report that it happened, please make sure you send it along. You can get a link to my email in the show notes. I am Tony Russo, arusso@kbpublications.com. Send your stuff along. I'd be happy to share it with the rest of our readership. This week there are two that I wanted to tell you about. One was Parish Funeral Home and Crematory in Urbandale, Iowa, purchased Hastings Funeral Home in Perry, Iowa. Now, Caldwell already had a shop in Perry, and so there's still not a lot of word on what's going to happen, whether those two buildings will merge as well, or whether they'll be run as separate buildings. Look for more on that in next week's reporting. This actually just came in, and I've already been speaking with the folks at Caldwell Parish. And the other one is funeral director Daniel J. Ania. Is a third generation funeral director from Mohawk Valley Funerals and Cremations, and he sold to Millstone Funeral Partners. And Millstone Funeral Partners describes itself as a funeral, cemetery, and crematory ownership organization operating across New England, the tri-state area, and the mid-Atlantic areas. And Enya will stay on for the foreseeable future as the manager, but the Milestone Partners has taken over ownership of this company. The reason I'm mentioning this is in next week's FSI, there will be a really interesting story about kind of the balance between selling to a consolidator or selling to an independent that's looking to grow. There are pros and cons to both. There are reasons to do either. And I think next week we have a story that really kind of bears that out. So I would love for you to check that out. But in the meanwhile, you can find links to the details on these two mergers and acquisitions and the other ones that we come across in the show notes. And that is going to do it for this week. A gentle reminder, we are still taking nominations for the Funeral Director of the Year and for the American Cemetery Awards. If you are or know a funeral director who has really kind of exemplified what you think funeral directing should be, or if there's someone you look up to who you believe exemplifies what funeral directing should be, nominate them. Go to Kates-Boylston.com, and there is a nomination form and process. Similarly, if you're really proud of your cemetery and you want other people to know why, there's no better way than to be nominated for an American Cemetery Excellence and ACE Award. We run the winners and the runners-up will be made public in December, and we always kind of do a big deal about it, and it's something to be proud of. It's a really kind of good independent way that the industry celebrates itself. And we look forward to getting your applications soon. In case you missed it, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written, edited, and videoed by me, Tony Russo. Check us out on the web and follow us on our Instagram page, which is where we put this up. We also put this up on YouTube if you are listening on our podcast feed. We're doing some more fun stuff on YouTube. We're trying to put more stuff out and trying to make sure it's worth your time when you go to visit it. So throw the Kates-Boylston YouTube page on your browser as one of those places that you check out. And we will see you next time on In Case You Missed It.